old saying goes, no matter how flat you make a pancake, there's always two sides to it. What this means is that there are two perspectives and sides to every story. In the beginning of law enforcement in the 1800s, law enforcement was perceived in two ways, good and evil. Media caused most of these perceptions. It played a major role. The media also caused cultures to perceive law enforcement differently. Even the way language is used caused law enforcement to be perceived differently also. Going back to the saying, it can be applied to how law enforcement is portrayed by the media's point of view. First and foremost, the media alters or affects the way people think of law enforcement. Stated in the article, Social Media and Law Enforcement officers are put into more danger because of social media. People are taking videos and pictures and putting it in the media. Most of these pictures and videos are bad. People who view these pictures and videos have a changing perception of law enforcement officers. This is part of the reason for hate crime. Media does not get the full story before reporting it either. It causes bad situations for law enforcement. For example, the Michael Brown case was reported incorrectly and not given enough details. This caused riots and police hate crimes across the nation. However, media has helped law enforcement in many ways. Media is used to catch criminals and save lives. For instance, Amber Alerts. Amber Alerts are used to help find the child and capture the abductor. It causes people to perceive law enforcement as good guys because they are just doing their job. Media has allowed law enforcement to put themselves out there too. For instance, some law enforcement agencies have Facebook pages. It lets the public know what is going on, and it allows law enforcement to stay updated with the community. It's a friendly manner, causing a positive perspective for law enforcement. Similarly, each culture looks or perceives law enforcement differently. Some cultures perceive law enforcement in a negative manner. According to the article, Cultural Awareness Training for Police in the United States, there has been growing tension between the African American culture and law enforcement after the incident of Rodney King. Rodney King was an African American who was brutally assaulted by law enforcement. Here is the video that shows the brutal beating. This beating caused an uproar in the African American community. It led to riots, fights, and more controversial cases like Trayvon Martin. Tension is still shown today between the African American culture and law enforcement by Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. This culture, the African American culture, perceives law enforcement in a certain manner because of the media. The culture of law enforcement can also cause a negative perspective. Immigration was very popular back then in the United States. Most immigrants, however, were looked down upon, but they still needed employment, so most, like the Irish, applied to be law enforcement officers. The people perceived the Irish law enforcement officers as mentally unfit and corrupt to work in the law enforcement field. Their label of misfits carried on from Europe to the United States. Some cultures or people perceive law enforcement in a positive manner, while law enforcement does the same to them. Things have been done to help cultures and law enforcement get along better. Certain training programs are required for law enforcement, so law enforcement officers are not so biased. The success of these programs allow a bond to be built between the law enforcement officers and the people. It creates a positive perspective from both citizens and law enforcement. Strangely enough, language can cause the perceptions of law enforcement. Found in the textbook Communication Matters, cultural or subgroups have their own language, which can cause confusion and negative outlooks sometimes. Certain words or gestures mean something different in each culture or society. It can cause a confusing or negative perspective for law enforcement if they say or even do something wrong. The officer could say something that is a norm to them but is wrong to the other person. It's a blockage of communication, and it causes frustration between law enforcement and the people. However, when law enforcement is used correctly and efficiently, it forms a positive outlook for law enforcement. According to the article, Overcoming Language Barriers, Solutions for Law Enforcement, knowing who the officer is communicating with can cause a positive solution. Picking up language of others forms a better positive perspective. Someone might not understand what the officer is saying, and it can become complicated and confusing. Having the officer simplify what they're saying can create a better bond and perception for the officer and the individual. Sometimes there's also a language barrier. Not everyone speaks the same language. It can be dealt with by communicating through a different way. language, like gestures, can be used for some communication. Law enforcement can also learn another language, for instance Spanish, because Spanish is very popular in the United States. No doubt, it is easy to see how much media can impact law enforcement and what people think of them. The media is closely linked to cultures and language. It is like a repeating cycle from culture to language to media, and so on. It is clear to see that media and cultures and language are like a dynamic trio that can either make or break law enforcement.